All right, India's digital transformation has been nothing short of remarkable. Poised to hit $1 trillion digital economy by 25-26. We're already there now. According to the report by Observer Research Foundation, the country is now on track to achieve a $300 billion electronics industry and a $1 trillion digital economy as well, like we said, potentially contributing to about 18 to 23% of the national GDP. And while sectors like fintech, e-commerce have led the charge, one industry that's rapidly gaining momentum is online gaming.
Right, and it's such an exciting industry. Global titles like PUBG, Free Fire, they've already proven the massive potential, generating thousands of crores in revenue. They are economic powerhouses with vast user bases based right here in India. But some reports and studies say that there's a catch. The games that are growing in India aren't Indian. Some reports have said that India's own gaming companies are struggling to claim their share of a lucrative market. So what's holding the country back? Why are global companies reaping the rewards compared to Indian developers? Is that the fair analysis? And if it is, what can we do to change that? To understand a little bit more on this topic and to understand it in depth, we'll have a few experts joining us here on the show. We'll start off first with Vaibhav Chavan. He is the underDOGS studio founder and game director, and he'll be with us to tell us a little bit more. Vaibhav, thank you for joining us here on the show. Vaibhav, you're someone that not just has founded their own studio, you also run a channel where you educate future gamers, people who want to be in the industry, women, men, you're big on gender parity there. So we'll ask you a lot about where the gaming industry stands right now. First, we just want to understand, give us some numbers and an overview. What does the gaming industry look like if you're a gamer? How big are Indian gamers, and how does it look if you're a creator? So someone like you who's out there creating games in a studio.
Firstly, thanks a lot for arranging this because there's a big gap in terms of the game creators versus the gamers in India. India has roughly around 700 or more than 700 companies today. Smaller studios, bigger studios, 3 to 4% of big studios who are into proper gaming businesses, but a lot of smaller studios trying to make bigger games, which can put India on a global map. And that's been a struggle for a few years, and there are a lot of obstacles that come, various policies, lack of knowledge sharing that happens. But it has always been a case that the game development sector has always been, not so much into the limelight. Compare that with the gaming audience, the gamers, you might have seen a big surge of gamers, the streamers that came in post-COVID who actually started playing games. And there's a lot of hype around that. But when it comes to actually making games, a lot of Indian gaming studios are majorly focusing on, real money gaming sectors where a lot of revenue has been done. We have seen, around 3,000 or 3,000 odd crores revenue made from India, but majority of that percentage is coming from real money gaming. So the pure play games that we are making, some of the studios who are actually building games which are free to play, mobile or even PC and console, that are not really coming out in limelight. And there are a lot of things which, come across these things.
I see. Interesting. We also have Vishal Gondal joining us, the CEO of GOQii. Vishal, is it fair to say at this point that while the gaming customer in India seems to be an expanding base, the gaming producers in India are shrinking? Is that a fair analysis? And if yes, why?
So it's really unfortunate that unlike let's say OTT platforms where Indian content dominates, whether it is Netflix, YouTube, everywhere Indian creators are dominating content platforms. Gaming, which is the biggest industry, has a problem. Currently, if you look at the top 100 games in India, I would say 99% of them will be foreign, and not just foreign. Most of them are going to be owned directly or indirectly by Chinese companies. So the problem is not only that they are foreign, they are owned directly, indirectly by Chinese companies. These companies have invested billions into game creation. They have some amazing game engine technologies, and they have a free ride in the Indian market today. Compared to that, to develop a decent game, it does require millions of dollars in investments. Uh, and not just investments, you need talent, you need gaming engines, gaming technology. So there is a, just like any other, like, any other sector like automobile or even mobile phone manufacturing, you need an ecosystem. So that ecosystem is missing. So while Indian gamers are enjoying and playing a lot of games worldwide, some of the big games, for example, PUBG, and I don't know what is this new name in India, but PUBG is doing close to 1,000 crores of revenue in India. And there's questions around where the data is going. All that, that's a different discussion. But I think there is a challenge, and I think it's also partly because the sector has got very little investment from the VCs. The VCs mostly invested in the real money gaming business. All the investors focused on where they thought that there is quick wins versus the gaming industry. So I think that the opportunity is very big. In fact, it is bigger than the media and entertainment business, right? So while we see so much money flowing into media entertainment, gaming is currently still very, very behind from an India perspective.
But Vishal, if I could just stay with you to ask you, you're someone who's been creating games since all the way back in the 90s. During the Kargil War, you actually came up with a game and then have led the idea of India Games, if it's fair to say. Not only your own company, but the idea of games standing for something patriotic. That's something you very much spearheaded. I want to ask you, you've worked with companies like Disney that are huge global behemoths. Not only that, you've also worked with VCs. So where is that problem? There are VCs, there are global companies looking to come in. Why aren't we seeing that ecosystem then get created?
So I think the problem is very simple, right? Nobody is investing in making local IPs. There are very few companies, Vaibhav, for example, is working on an IP on the PlayStation. We, by the way, in close collaboration with the movie star Akshay Kumar, are now launching 4G, which is going to be a very big game expected to launch, for which we have partnered with Nazara. Nazara is the only listed gaming company. So India just has started getting some kind of financial muscle in the gaming industry. So previously, there were no listed companies, no analysts were tracking this industry. And now that there is some spotlight, the question, like what you are asking, is that, hey, all these billions of dollars are great, but who's taking that money? The reality is, bulk of that money is going out of India, and not a single game developer is getting a dollar out of the gaming industry.
That's actually quite fascinating, because looking at the number of consumption, there seems to be a massive divide there on how India is consuming games versus how India is making games, which brings me to, Vaibhav as well. Vaibhav, then how do we bridge this gap at this point? Can you tell us a little bit from a gaming producer's perspective? What is the lack? One, of course, is funding. As Vishal also spoke about, is there also lack of talent? Is there lack of infrastructure? Is it regulation? What is it?
I think it's little bit of everything. Like Vishal sir said, right? The primary problem is investments, and the thing that investment is not happening is because there are not enough case studies. Also, India has not done that before, and it's quite a nascent stage for the gaming industry today. The second problem is, yes, we don't have a great ecosystem. If you look at the West, you see European countries, they have a very collaborative approach while they create games. India does not really have that at this moment. We've seen this gap of expertise, especially like today we are building a game called Mukti, which is a first person exploration game, and it revolves around human trafficking. But a subject like that, which is very social, right? We tried raising funds before, but we couldn't. But then last year, Sony PlayStation came in India, and they handpicked 5 studios from India. Now, their idea of building an ecosystem is completely different. You can't give someone $10 million and tell them to create a AAA title, a bigger game. You need that kind of expertise and that technical support that bigger players can come in and support you with, which is what Sony is today doing with us. And that is how we are trying to create, an exceptional quality, visual quality game from India, which can dominate global market. So if we are building it today, tomorrow we'll create that culture, that DNA within the studio, which can then spread across different verticals, right? People from our company would start their own companies, and that's how the actual ecosystem will build, and people will start creating more and more games, right? So that ecosystem is missing. The third problem I feel is the institutions and the colleges. There is a very few. So if you talk about engineering, right, you have an engineering college in India where a student goes and becomes an engineer. A for MBBS also, you go there and you become a doctor, right? There's nothing in India where you go and become a game developer. So, there are a lot of institutes which are just struggling to create that curriculum which can help you become something. There are a lot of institutes which can actually, which have these titles like game design and development course, but at the end of the day, they teach just the artwork, which is not the reality of the Indian gaming industry. And that's what, I personally also have been teaching, and Vishal sir also have recently started on, social media channels where we try to put out content which belongs to the industry, which is the real practical use of it, right? So government should basically start creating these incubators, say accelerators, hackathons, and also inculcate that understanding from the school levels itself, which can then eventually 5-10 years later we'll have a great amount of talent from India.
So an ecosystem for incubation. Sorry, go ahead, Vishal.
Yeah, I think I just want to add one other thing, like just like other industries where there's technology transfer being an important thing, the reality is that these companies are operating, there is no technology transfer. So, there needs to be just like, the automobile or any other industry where government is insisting that, listen, you need to make in India. So get your gaming technology into India, get an Indian JV partner of some kind if need be. Because while we are opening our market, the reality is that none of the technology is coming to India, and which is part of the problem. So I think the government, because you can't launch your game in China, it's a closed market, but we are letting these companies directly or indirectly come here without any local benefit. So I think the framework is already there for other industries, which has been done. And I don't know why we are not focused on this.
Right.
The other thing about gaming industry, which is kind of unique, is just like any other creative industry, you need many shots on the goal. You can't just have 2 games and expect them to be hits and say, "Arey, gaming industry is not doing well." You need hundreds of games to be made for 1 or 2 or 3 to be hit, just like the movie or entertainment business. So there is a very the content quantity and quality both needs to be improved. So just funding 2-3 games and expecting these 2-3 games to become global hits is again a fallacy.
Yeah.
Can we ask though, Vishal, I do want to ask you, you're someone who's been doing this since you were 16 years old. If someone is a young 16 or 17-year-old creator here who wants to create video games, we've highlighted, what could be the possible problems. A lack of incubation systems, for example. You've said a lack of frameworks. But Vishal, when you look at India, what are the exciting things coming out of the country when it comes to games that are being developed, exciting parts in the country where there are incubation systems that are growing? What do you see that excites you and makes you optimistic?
See, today, thanks to generative AI and a lot of open source gaming engines, anybody sitting from their bedroom can create a very high quality game. Today, I think because of the technology, the bar of how much investment you need is going down. Also, I would say that we need to focus on uniqueness. I think the only shining example of a game which is made in India, which is successful, is a game called Ludo King. And it's a very, that's the only game. I would say that's the only example.
Yeah.
And Ludo King was made with a very small studio. I think when they made it, they were less than 10 people. Maybe now they are a little bigger, but they are the great example of how they created almost the category of Ludo King. So I think that just how Ludo King was created, there are a million other, there are stories from our mythology, and there are stories from so many other things, and there is, there are so many local games. So I think there is an opportunity to innovate,
Yeah, yeah.
but the problem is that there is absolutely uh, very, very limited investment available. Good news is that government has created ABCG policy. They have announced that they are going to do a center of excellence in Mumbai. So they are saying the right thing. PM Modi has talked about Make in India gaming. So I think that the government also is kind of aware of this, and we are just hoping that now with the industry and the government coming together, we are going to make sure that our gamers are, are finally playing the games which are made in India.
Wow, that is quite nice. Vishal and Vaibhav, thank you so much for highlighting the issues, the opportunities, and just giving us a sense of what gaming in India is looking at. Thank you both. I think one bit that we didn't touch upon was how these game development actually happens, not just for games, but for various other things, for health, etc. There's a massive gamification that is actually happening in India, but that's a story perhaps for another day. For the moment, we are going to slip into a break. Coming up on the other side, we have a very interesting chat